a massive game with huge playoff implications in the Eastern Conference, the wild card race, Panger. And at the start, it was all Habs. The first half of the first period, it was completely dominated by the road team. But then the Jackets turned it on and never let up.
Well, whenever you're the home team, too, there's pressure. You're behind by Montreal by 2 points. Everyone knows what's on the line in a game like this, Billy. And the fact of the matter is, at the beginning, I was a little concerned for the Columbus Blue Jackets. I thought the buzzing of the Montreal Canadiens was solid. I thought there was a little apprehension and maybe a little anxiety as well in the building. You're looking at it. It's a 0-0 game, and then you're down by 1. But the Columbus Blue Jackets, I think they showed their mettle. I thought they came up with a big boy game when they needed that kind of game. They won the board battles. They sort of gained a lot of momentum off of this shift in particular, Billy, that we were watching this going, okay, now this is how you beat Montreal. A much smaller team up front, a quick team on the forecheck, a team that relies on 4 lines. But if you've got the size and you've got the brawn along the boards, you've got to eliminate them. I thought the crowd in Columbus, after that shift in particular, late in the second, I thought the crowd got going. I thought the energy got going. There was a buzz. And then I thought some confidence kind of followed in after that shift in particular.
Here's what happened. A really bad first period by Columbus.
Yep.
Montreal came out, clogged up the neutral zone, turnover after turnover, eventually got their first goal off a turnover in transition. They had some hustle plays by Montreal. They're getting outworked. All of a sudden, you go in that dressing room, Torts, whatever was said, this Columbus team came out, and they were a much different team, much more physical, much more prepared, and they had that emotion and passion. It was not there in the first period, which, to your point, I'm concerned. Yep. Where is this in this big game? So you get this early with Montreal, and this is a team, Montreal, you think, ready to play. Deneau coming back on the back check against Panarin. This is stuff. Jonathan Drouin against Seth Jones, just not letting up. And this was constant. Look at the shot total, the halfway through the first period. It's 7-0, for the Canadiens. Shea Weber in front of his net. We got 5 Montreal Canadiens in front of your screen.
Look at that.
Able to battle it out. And Montreal dictated the first period. So all of a sudden you go to the dressing room, and that switch got turned on big time by the Blue Jackets.
Quick question, Panger.
Yeah.
When a defenseman makes a play like that for you,
in front of you,
do you owe him a meal like Shea Weber?
You're a team. You're buying cold ones. You're buying meals. At that particular point, though, when we watch it, we're saying that's a team that's all in. There's 5 men in the picture right there. Almost 5 white sweaters inside the crease helping out their goaltender. It was all-out desperation at that point. But, Bill, the start to the Montreal Canadiens, and in talking to their coaches, and you talk to their players, yesterday I had a good talk with Kirk Muller. They rely on 4 lines. They rely on energy and forechecking, and I can't help but think, Paul Byron's injured right now. He averages nearly 15 minutes a night. He's got 15 goals. He's a plus player. He's got 3 game-winning goals and 2 shorthanded goals. They needed that spark. I'm not saying that would have been the ultimate difference in a game like this. I think Columbus would have worn them down if they played that game that they played in the second period. But, boy, it was an ill-advised time, I think, for a player of such value with so much on the line for the Montreal Canadiens.
Montreal Canadiens average, if you look at their ice time, their top guys play around 16, 17 minutes. Their bottom guys play around 12 minutes. They play 4 lines, and they rely on that tempo and pressure to kind of go after that. That was prevalent in that first period. That's their game plan. They're not very talented, but all of a sudden you get a Columbus team that's going to match that work ethic, and you're going to be able to come out there with their own tempo and roll 4 lines. Columbus has got a more talented team. Montreal's gotten by playing that hard system, going after teams. Carey Price has been brilliant. Sergei Bobrovsky, what can you say about him in his recent stretch? But this Columbus team, if they play like this and play committed as a group, this felt like a team. This is one of those games that it seems like it's all come together with the trade pieces and everything starting to fit recently, what Columbus is starting to do, and the emotion from John Tortorella on the bench.
Yeah.
You could
after
see
that play by Andrew Shaw.
Yeah, Andrew Shaw. Even after that 5th goal, he's doing the fist pump down the bench. He was fired up.
He was like Josh before a show, just getting Josh Anderson, getting him ready to go, and they brought it.
So that emotion was boom.
Every player contributed in this victory. And it also came on the heels, guys, on home ice of a poor goal against Sergei Bobrovsky on the short side by Petrie. And when that happens and you're on home ice, you could feel a complete momentum sapper, but yet the resilience of this hockey club came through at the end, and they didn't seem to be bothered by that goal that he gave up against Petrie.
And how much is Bobrovsky helped them out in the recent stretch. They got the confidence in the kid.
3 shutouts in his last 5, and he was obviously strong here.
This guy gave up a bad one. Let's pick him up because he's picked him up
and
the last 3-4 games.
Boone Jenner laid it on the line, and big shot block with an empty net, right there. So everybody was all in tune on the defensive side of it as well.
So 6-2 the final, 5 unanswered goals for the Blue Jackets. They have 3 straight victories. They're, 5-2-1 in the last 8, and they now own the second and final wild card spot in the Eastern Conference playoff race. It was a big tilt, and it goes to CBJ.